Hello, I'm Ali, and in this video we'll talk about using the work of an expert. Auditing often requires expert knowledge of several high technical and rapidly expanding subjects that require advanced training and experience. While these issues now form an integral part of the audit environment, it is neither practical nor necessary for every member of the audit staff to have the detailed knowledge needed to be an expert in them. So, in a case where auditor does not have the required skills and knowledge to assess the validity of an account or a transaction, auditor may engage the services of an expert. An expert is a person with the skill, knowledge, and experience required to help the auditor when gathering audit evidence. An expert may be a member of the audit firm who is not a member of the audit team, an employee of the client, or a person independent of both the audit firm and its client. ACCA 620 using the work of an expert provides guidelines for auditors when using the work of an expert. Firstly, the auditor assesses whether an expert is required. Once it's finalized that an expert is required, then auditor determines the scope of work to be carried out. The next comes the selection of an expert to complete the work. For this, the auditor assesses the capacity of the expert to do so and their objectivity. So once an expert has completed their work, an auditor assesses the work and draws conclusion based upon the assessment, as the ultimate responsibility for drawing conclusion based upon gathering evidence rests with the auditor. Now, each of these stages will be discussed in details in the next few slides. The first is assessing the need to use an expert. When collecting evidence, an auditor may decide that they do not have the expertise necessary when collecting the evidence. So they don't have the expertise to test and evaluate the accuracy of reported information. They may decide that they need assistance in the form of an expert opinion or report to corroborate other evidence obtained. For example, in case of mining firm, a geologist may be engaged to evaluate the quantity and quality of mineral deposits. In case of a winery, a vintner may be engaged to assess the quality and value of wine stocks. An actuary may be engaged for an insurance company to verify insurance premiums, or registered valuer may be engaged to provide an opinion on the value of a client's property. The need to use the services of an expert depends upon the knowledge of the audit team, the significance and complexity of the item being assessed, and the availability of appropriate alternative corroborating evidence. If the audit team has experience with the item being audited and can draw on their knowledge from previous audits of that client or similar companies in the same industry, there is less need to use an expert. The greater the risk of material misstatement of the item under consideration, the more likely an auditor will turn to an expert for their advice. Overall, I can say that the less knowledge the audit team has of the item under consideration, the greater the risk of material misstatement, and less corroborating evidence available, the more likely an auditor will conclude that an expert opinion is required. The next issue is the determination of the scope of the work to be carried out. Once it is finalized that an expert opinion is required, the scope of the work to be carried out is determined by the auditor and communicated to the expert. It is important that the auditor is involved in setting the scope of the work required, as the judgment of the expert forms part of the audit evidence upon which the auditor forms their audit opinion. Auditor normally gives written instructions to expert, and these written instructions cover the issues that the expert is to report upon, such as the market price of properties owned by the client, the details to be included in the report, such as the computations used in arriving at your opinion, the source of data to be used, such as the market interest rates or market price of shares, clarification of the way that the auditor intends to use the information included in the expert's report, and notice of the requirement that the expert's report and the data used in compiling the report must remain confidential. The next issue is the assessment of the capability of the expert. Before hiring an expert, an auditor assesses their capacity to complete the work required. This process involves an evaluation of the expert's qualifications, the reputation of the expert within their field, and extent of their experience in providing the type of opinion or report sought by the auditor are also assessed. Objectivity refers to the ability to form an opinion without the influence of personal preferences. When an expert is an employee of the client or in some other way connected to the client, an auditor assesses the objectivity of the expert with reference to their professional status, their reputation, and the auditor's prior experience with the expert, especially if an expert's opinion has proven to be accurate in the past. It increases the reliability the auditor may place on the expert's opinion in the current audit. Nevertheless, the less independent the expert is from the client, the more corroborating evidence the auditor will require. The next is the assessment of the expert's report. It is very important that expert's report should be written in such a way that an auditor who is not an expert in the field being reported on can understand the technical content of the report. The report should detail each stage of the process used in arriving at the overall conclusion of the report. It should include information about the data sources or estimation models used. The auditor assesses the consistency of the information included in the expert's report with their understanding of their client. At the end, the auditor assesses the consistency of the conclusion drawn with corroborating evidence gathered by the audit team. The next issue is the responsibility for the conclusion. The responsibility for arriving at an overall conclusion regarding the truth and fairness of a client's financial reports rests with the auditor. When an auditor decides to use an expert, that responsibility is not reduced in any way. It is the responsibility of the auditor to assess the quality of the evidence provided by an expert and determine whether it is reliable and objective, and an auditor does this by following the process outlined above. In the next lesson, we will talk about the persuasiveness of audit evidence. Thank you.